Now available for the first time in paperback. Stop Simping in the Workplace. Men, learn what you need to know in order to protect your job from workplace predators with Stop Simping in the Workplace. Available in paperback at online booksellers everywhere. When it comes down to most of these women who are part of this so-called Me Too and Time's Up movement, I don't believe we're getting the objective facts as related to their allegations of sexual harassment and their allegations of sexual assault. Because when it comes down to many women out there, many women like to revise history, and they like to revise history because they like to make themselves look out to be the good guy. And when it comes down to many of these women, they often see the world through rose-colored glasses. Now, rose-colored glasses are these glasses that give you a picture that looks like reality, but it's often distorted so that we don't see the picture clearly for what it is. And many of these women, because they see the world through rose-colored glasses, what they do is they color the events based on their feelings. And because they color the events based on their feelings, what happens is an event that happened many years ago that they consider to be positive, 25 to 30 years later, gets turned into something negative. And that's what happens when you have things viewed from the subjective view and the emotional view of women. They often color the events based on their feelings. And what they will do is take that event where they were sitting there meeting that celebrity and all giddy over that celebrity in their 20s, and then turn it into a case of sexual harassment and sexual assault in their 40s. And the reason why they do this, again, is because they are revising history and revising the narrative so that they can look like the good guy in the story. Because oftentimes in many of these cases of these Me Too allegations, we can clearly see that the female was just as complicit as the male in participating in this inappropriate behavior. However, what these women are doing now is trying to rewrite and revise history in order to make themselves appear to be the victim. Because when it comes down to many females, they believe that they can do no wrong, and they believe that they are never wrong because we have a whole group of beta male simps who enable these women by supporting them in whatever irresponsible, reckless, or egregious behaviors they participate in. And because these beta males want to get the attention and approval of these women, they'll go along with these women's revised historical narratives instead of taking a clear look at the objective facts in many of these alleged cases of sexual harassment and sexual assault. Now, someone who takes an objective look at these allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault will take a clear look at all of the evidence and base their judgments based on the objective evidence presented to them. Now, when I look at many of these allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault, again, I have a lot of critical questions regarding them because why did these women wait so long to go out here and make these claims of sexual harassment and sexual assault? I mean, why didn't, if they were having problems with many of these men 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, why did they not go and file a claim with law enforcement? In many cases, many of these guys who they were making claims against back in the day, many of these guys were at the bottom of the barrel. Many of these guys were up and comers, and they could easily have made a claim to human resources about this guy's behavior. And I can look at many of these cases, like your Matt Lauers, like your Bill Cosby's, and I can make that observation because I listened to many of these women making these allegations from 20, 30, and 40 years ago. And again, these guys were at the bottom and starting their careers. You could easily have made a claim to human resources, or you could have easily called the police and filed a police report against this individual. However, I believe when you take a objective look at the facts, you clearly see that the female saw this celebrity, saw herself getting an opportunity to be in the presence of the celebrity, and decided that she wanted to get with this celebrity because she was getting attention from this celebrity. And because she was getting attention from the celebrity at the time, it was a positive thing. However, over 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years, many of these women, what they did was started taking a look at their lives. They started taking a look at how many of the inappropriate behaviors they participated in, many of the shady behaviors they participated in, and many of the slutty behaviors they participated in. And they took that look at themselves and they saw that they were not the good guy in these stories. So, what they wanted to do was revise history to make the guy look like the bad guy, because it's always a man's fault that these women participated in these behaviors, and they didn't want to take responsibility for those behaviors. So, in their mind, they revised history based on emotions, and they recolored the events to make them appear negative instead of being the positive experience they had many years ago when they were young and attractive and were getting the attention of this celebrity, and this celebrity was allowing them to have carnal relations with them and paying attention to them. That was positive back then. However, as they get older and they start taking a look at the direction of their lives and seeing their lives going nowhere, or seeing themselves in a place at the bottom of the world, or never seeing themselves making any sort of progress the way they wanted to make, what they do is, again, recolor these events based on their feelings and make that great experience they had in their 20s turn into a case of an allegation of sexual harassment and sexual assault. And these events, again, are being revised because the woman sees her life going nowhere. She sees herself as being miserable. And what she wants to do is get attention for herself by saying that she is now a victim of sexual harassment and sexual assault now, but she wasn't a victim 25 or 30 years ago. And what she really wants to do, again, is get attention for herself by revising these events, recoloring these events, and making them out to be something that they're not. And when it comes down to many of these women, they want to believe this to be the truth, because when it comes down to a lot of these women, a lot of them are notorious liars. And what they want to do is they told the lie to themselves so much that now they believe it to be the truth. And that's what makes a lot of these Me Too allegations, hard to fight against, because the women themselves have convinced themselves that these lies are the truth, and they've recolored, revised these events, and made it out to make themselves out to be the victim, and they want to remain in that victim position because they believe that this victim position will get them, one, the attention that they want from the world; two, they will get them a reward in the terms of trying to get access to this man's resources; and three, they will have company to join them as they remain miserable. Because when it comes down to many of these women who are part of this Me Too movement, many of these women are extremely miserable. They're looking back at their lives, they're looking back at the years of ratchet behavior they've participated in, like sleeping with celebrities, like being a side piece to a celebrity, like participating in the casting couch, and like participating in things like sleeping with the boss to get a job. And they're looking back at their lives, they're looking back at all of the unethical and dirty things that they did, and they see a very, very bad picture of themselves, and they're doing everything desperately to make themselves out to be the hero of the story or the victim of the story, when in actuality, when you take a clear and objective look at these events as they transpire from a God-centered perspective, you can clearly see where the woman was equally at fault in many of these allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault as alleged by many of these women who are part of this Me Too movement, who want to tell the lie that they have gained the courage to go out here and make these claims, when in actuality it's about them trying to make one last desperate effort in an attempt to get attention for themselves, and an effort to try to get their names back out there in the hopes of trying to get access to the stage for the last 15 seconds of 15 minutes of fame, and some access at this man's resources one last time, and an opportunity to take one last dig at that man in an effort to make him just as miserable as they feel about themselves. Because when it comes down to many of these women who are part of this Me Too movement, they want everybody to be Me Too because they want everybody to be just as miserable just as they are. Because when it comes down to many of these women, again, these are women who are taking that long, hard look at their lives. They don't like the story that's being told regarding the actions they participated in. And now they want to try to make some man some sort of scapegoat for all of their actions. And they want to hold that man accountable for many of the actions they willfully and intentionally participated in by being, again, that side piece, by being that groupie, or being on that casting couch, or trying to sleep with that boss in the hopes of getting some sort of promotion for themselves. They want the man to be the bad guy, but they don't want to take that accountability for themselves. And this is another thing as related to many of these females' behaviors, is that when you take a look at these females, what's really sad about them is that as they look back at their lives, that instead of taking a moment to self reflect and self examine and say, you know what, I made these bad decisions, I made these poor choices, and my life is a result of all of the poor choices I have made. No, instead of taking a minute to self reflect and self examine and take accountability for their actions, instead, they look for some old celebrity to blame for the actions they willfully participated in 20, 30, or 40 years ago. And they only want to do that because, again, they want to revise history to make themselves to be the hero, when in actuality, they were just as nefarious as the men they participated with in these behaviors. And that's what's really the saddest part about many of these women who are a part of this Me Too movement, is that they're giving us her story, but when we take a critical look at her story is filled with omissions, her story is filled with lies, her story is filled with inaccuracies, and all one has to do is take a critical look at her story and compare it to the facts to see where all the holes lie in her story. But because we have this whole group of beta males out there, and these people out there who believe in political correctness, they're going to take her story, which is filled with lies, inaccuracies, and all sorts of emotional recolorings and revisings of history, and use this as a way to destroy the careers of professional men and destroy the whole judicial process here in the United States. And that's, again, a really sad thing, because we should not be taking men and destroying their careers based on the allegations of a female who did not have the courage to go out here and take action when this incident was supposed to have occurred. Because if you really were violated that way, again, this man was never really that big of a deal. I mean, the allegations against Bill Cosby back in the 60s or the early 70s, Bill Cosby wasn't a star back then. He had no influence, he had no clout. The same thing with Morgan Freeman, and the same thing even with guys like Nat Lauer back when many of these allegations were made. Those men you could have easily taken care of those men then and dealt with those allegations in human resources or with law enforcement. But again, I believe many of these women who are a part of this Me Too movement, they are revising history because they are now 40, 50, even 60 years old. They're looking back at their lives. They don't like the picture of who they are. They don't like the picture of the behaviors they participated in. And they don't like the whole idea that they were equally a villain in the picture, and now they want to make themselves out to be the victim, and they want to rewrite the story to make the guy to be the bad guy, when in actuality, when we take an objective and, again, critical look at their behavior, it shows that they were equally just as culpable in these situations, and they should be held equally accountable in all of these situations. And when I look at this Me Too movement, it shows me that when it comes down to females, you just can't really trust a lot of their stories, because a lot of times, like a small child, what they will do is try to make themselves out to be the good person. But when we take a look at the actions, it speaks louder than the words that they say when they call out "me too." If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct Men's Issues books, like the Simp series, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.